increase from last year. And the increase, really variance, is due to the middle school STEM program. And we presented pretty extensively at the curriculum committee meetings on that proposal. And I want to again publicly thank our board for passing this program. We have been working on it, we, meaning the teachers and supervisors and coordinators, have been working on the curriculum and professional development, and we're all very excited to be able to share all of that with you. So the variance really basically comes from that STEM program. So as you can see, for program improvement, it's a 16% increase this year. I used last year as the baseline because last year was the first year that the actual devices for technology they were taken out of the curriculum budget. So then I'll be able to show 16, 17, 18, and further. And then I showed the curriculum office budget. So I did have some opportunity to really go through this budget and find ways to decrease the budget to offset somewhat the increase from program improvement. And I've listed those there, about $40,000. I did want to highlight the first one, the Linkit IU discount. Linkit, the company, offered any Bucks County School District currently using Linkit this discount this year because they signed a contract with Montgomery IU. So that was kind of thanking us, and that is why we had a decrease. And I also want to thank the board because we eliminated Bright Bites, and I think it was 2 years ago, we asked permission to purchase Bright Bites, which is a survey. It's surveying 21st century learning skills. And it really gave us an opportunity to understand how you survey and try to find the information you really need. We've studied that for the past couple of years, and the tech integrators and I feel comfortable that we're going to be able to work this summer to create our own survey that will give us the information that we need at no cost. So we're going to eliminate that. And some of the other things that I'm listing there, if you're not familiar with Math Buddies, we purchased this program, Math Buddies, and we used it for the year, but we did not find the results that we were looking for, so we eliminated that. And if you there are a couple other things that are relatively minor in cost, but we weren't using those, and they had been in the budget a couple of years in a row, so we just eliminated that. So in an effort to kind of balance this budget almost to the best that I could possibly, that is what you see there. So there is a decrease in the actual curriculum office budget for those reasons. And the other part of our budget is the elementary summer school budget, and it hasn't changed. It's actually been consistent over the past several years. I don't anticipate it changing, so you'll see no difference in that budget. So the overall, budget increase is 2.7% for this coming school year. Does anyone have any questions?
Dr. Yarnell?
Not a question, a comment.
Oh, certainly.
In terms of the program improvement, which I think is a particularly important part of your budget, because it is what we try to do to upgrade the learning of our students across the K through 12 spectrum. That program was established by Dr. Kish roughly 2 decades ago for the amount of $300,000 a year. And it was intended to be something that did not incur an additional cost, taxpayer paid cost increased year after year. It has been temporarily increased at times to $350,000 or even $400,000, but it has remained at $300,000, thereby swallowing all the inflation that has occurred in the last 2 decades. So I think this year's number of $305,000 is a very good approximation of that, and obviously I am particularly pleased by the middle school STEM program that we're establishing. I think that's something that students will be really excited by, so it's worth putting that into this budget. Not that the other things aren't worth it, but that perhaps is the most worthwhile thing that you're planning this year. So I just wanted to point out to board members who hadn't been here as long as I have been that this is something that's been established long-term, and the number is very much in line with what we have used for all those years.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to everyone. can't tell you how much we appreciate your support and enthusiasm, especially with the innovation coming our way.
Anybody else have anything for Dr. Scheid, or are we going to set a record here? Looks like we have a record. Thank you, Dr. Scheid.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Okay, guys, so we'll take a look at the proposed final general fund budget. At this point, goals for tonight are to review the status of the 17-18 budget, discuss our options to balance the budget, and to define the path for the 17-18 budget moving forward. Another look at, you've seen this slide before, this is the allowable tax rate impact for this year based on the Act 1 index of 2.5%. The state will allow additional 3.3 mils with a revenue of about $2 million. And again, we're nowhere near this, but this is our actual budget is nowhere near this, but this is the allowable increase under the Act 1 index. Again, showing you our budget for the last 2 years, plus how we've got to the point where we're at right now. We started in March at $1.1 million deficit, down to a $337,000 deficit. Again, our budgeted expenditures exceed our budgeted revenue by 0.25%, and the budget deficit is equal to about $0.5 million, or 0.41%, which is far under the index of 2.5%, and the impact on the median assessed value would be about $17. Same information as last month review of what the revenue picture looks like, local revenue, state revenue, and then our federal revenue sources. Again, same scenario as last month, the summaries by object. Salaries up about $116,000. Impacted a great deal by retirements. This was the one category we saw the most change from our two budget runs that we presented to you. Biggest increase within the budget, of course, is the 200 line item, which is the benefits, and the big driver in that benefit line item is the retirement, which is about a $1.8 million increase this year for the state mandated retirement increase. So that's the major driver on the expenditure side within this budget, and also within the professional services. And if you recall, we saw those increases when we looked at the people services budget, those needs for those students for services. So those are the two major drivers this year. The rest of the account codes are relatively stable, with the exception that we had to move a lot of dollars around based on some accounting changes from the state, where we moved a lot of money out of the 400 object and the 700 object and put that money into the 600 object. So where we're at on timeline right now, we're here at May 3rd. On May 1st, PDE sent notification of our property tax allocation. We actually received that yesterday by email. property tax allocation is within a few $1,000s of what it is this year. And again, that is a dollar for dollar reduction in the real estate tax. So that will have no impact up or down on the total budget from the revenue side. The dollars we receive go right back out in the homestead and farmstead exemption. Proposed final budget adoption date would be May 15th. We need to pass the budget twice, once in May, and then have a 30-day period between the first and second adoption of the budget. The final budget then will be on June 19th, and we need to have an advertising period there and a period of time when the budget is on display after its first passage to the public, for the public to review. And looking at our options, where we're at, and these are these are the things that we talked about last month. We have really three options to deal with the $337,000 deficit between revenues and expenditures. One option is to raise the real estate tax millage by about $0.5 mil, or about 0.41%. And again, that impact is about $17. That would generate enough money to balance the budget. The second option is to commit dollars from our fund balance in that amount, $337,000, in order to balance the budget. And the third option would be to reduce expenditures by eliminating the 4.1 teachers that we have added to this budget to increase opportunities at the high school for courses, and also add a math position at the middle schools. Certainly it's an option. It's certainly not an option that the administration, I believe any of us in the administration, would recommend at this time. So those are our three options at this point. And again, if we cut those positions, it would be about $345,000. So it would be enough to balance the budget. Next slide is where we are at fund balance wise, end of 15 actual, the end of 16 actual, projected at the end of 17. Our unassigned fund balance is about $9 million, and our total fund balances are about 15.8 at the end of last fiscal year. So certainly the dollars are available within our unassigned fund balance, and actually you can see there on the fiscal year 2017 projected, the last column, I've actually put in a balanced general fund budget line item to show what our fund balance would be if we did commit that fund balance and reserve it. So you can see how that would look. It's not a large impact on our total overall fund balance. And the next slide is to open it up to the board members to talk about our path forward, discuss it, and to define it. As I said, define the path.
Everybody's looking over here at me. So, thank you, Sean. So, the fourth option would be to raise it up to the index. We voted not to, but that would potentially be a fourth outcome,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Which we don't want to talk about that, but it would be. So, we had a pretty thorough presentation last time. Does anyone have any questions as far as what the options are? You know, they're pretty clear. Dr. Yearend?
I have a question which pertains to the budget, not specifically to the options. Mr. Dalbert, in terms of I know you've maintained a stable number for the federal budget, well, actually down from the previous year, but stable from the original presentation, as well as an increase on the state side. Now, certainly the Trump administration has proposed a slashed budget for education next year, and the state has, according to today's paper, $1 billion deficit. Are those numbers realistic, I guess is my question, or are we going to see lower numbers than what have been projected?
Everything that we've seen from the state so far is that the rhetoric that we've heard is it seems the Republicans and Democrats are both behind the funding increase for basic ed funding. We have built that into this budget. We're not hearing about any movement to cut that at this time. So we've taken that kind of leap of faith and built those dollars in. It is something that we did not do last year because it was really a different rhetoric coming from the state last year, really the last 2 years. And there were competing budgets being talked about on both sides of the parties as far as what to do for education. But that being said, this year it seems to be a consistent message from each side. Now, I don't have a crystal ball, so who knows what the next 2 months are going to bring to us. But at this point, we feel fairly comfortable about it. And on the federal side, again, we did decrease the one federal line item because of the lack of funding. We did leave Title I and II the way they are currently. Title II is the one that they're talking about potentially cutting back on. Title II is not a great deal of money for us, and it is an adjustment we can make within the budget if Title II does come out and be lower. It's a kind of a mid or in-year adjustment that we can make because truly with federal program, doesn't matter what the number is you budget, you can only spend what you receive. So it is a budget that we can adjust upward or downward based on what the actual receipts are. So this the federal one, as far as from a budgeting standpoint, is not a bother. It's not a worry as far as just from a budgeting standpoint because we can adjust. Certainly, it is a worry from the fact that could possibly receive less money to help educate kids, for sure.
I have a question, Mr. Paxton. Sean, refresh my memory. Our unassigned fund balance, you said, was approximately 7% of the total budget. Is that?
Yeah, it's
that the
about,
new number still stays there?
yeah, it's just under $9 million, and it can only go by law to 8%. It can't go any higher than that.
Right, and they were, I'm sorry.
Yeah, if it does go higher than that, the district would be forbidden by state law to change the real estate tax rate. Certainly, committing the fund balance for capital projects and things or other things like that is an allowable way to use those funds.
Correct.
To use those funds. Yeah.
And they recommend between 4% and 6%, if I recall, the state. Is that correct?
Really, the state, I don't know that the state really recommends anything. They just set a upper limit on what you can have.
So we're certainly within functional limits if we pull the money out of the fund balance to balance the budget.
Absolutely.
Mrs. Yardley?
Yeah, I have a question about the fund balance in 2016. So I'm just wondering, did we use money out of the future retirement rate increase, or did we just move it to, or did we just uncommit it and move it to other things? I think we used it in the budget last year, so when we took that and put it in the budget, then it's gone from that section, but I don't think we spent it. Am I correct?
You're correct in the fact that it was budgeted for as a part of the budget. So then in the fund balances at the end of the year, it was reduced. It became part of the revenue within the general fund budget. And then at the end of the fiscal year, the revenues exceeded the expenditures within the general fund budget. And the part of that went to the unassigned fund balance, because you can see it went up, and the other part went to, of those dollars went to capital projects fund, which will fund the projects that we spent so much time talking about tonight: camera, phone system, IDF, MDF, closet upgrades, and so forth. So every dollar that that we talk about that at the end of a fiscal year, that's revenues above expenditures, goes to that capital projects fund and is used for purposes of advancing the district. And quite frankly, if that didn't happen, if we didn't have that addition, those revenues above expenditures, at some point the district would need to borrow money through a bond issue in order to do our capital projects in the summertime. And as Jeff has brought you many times, and he'll bring you again when he has the capital projects list updated ongoing, we have 4, 5, 6 year plan going out that, and these aren't projects to turn the district into a Taj Mahal. These are projects to keep the district functioning, to keep the buildings functioning, to keep them operational. We're talking about those type of projects, not your your grand pie in the sky type projects. We're talking about security and taking care of kids and making sure that the buildings are safe, secure, and habitable. So those are really your two options. You either fund that capital projects line item through the general fund budget, or you float bonds and you pay interest on it, and you pay much more in the end doing it that way. It's just like a mortgage on your house.
Do you have the actuals for 2016?
Yeah, 2016, fiscal year in 2016, the total revenues were $4,000 shy of 127 million, so it's $127 million revenue. Total expenditures were about 120 million. That difference was about 7.2 million. In that 7.2 million, it's about 5.6% of the budgeted expenditures. And like we said, those dollars went to the capital projects fund and are funding those projects we talked about. So, and the 15-16 budget was certainly a budget that was built in a time period where we had the district at that point in time had 2 collective bargaining agreements that weren't settled, so that budget was built with a lot of unknowns, with very big ticket unknowns. So,
It's part of why you were able to not spend that retirement money. Doesn't it come all the way back to that year almost? I mean, you ended up moving it to Mrs. Yarley's first question, if I heard it correctly. I mean, it ended up in it ended up where it did.
yeah.
Because of the way some of the negotiations ended up with our contract, and your successor, who had budgeted
Yes.
for certain potential outcomes that
Yep.
did not occur. And I think that's where, to me, that's where the big part of the extra, or the reduction in expenses are.
Absolutely.
because there wasn't the teacher's salary increase, there wasn't the benefits associated with it, there wasn't the PSERs associated with it. But we had was built into that budget.
That's right.
That's where that big number comes from. Mrs. Cohen, do you have a question?
More just comments. As far as, like Sean, like you just said about having to end up borrowing the money, and, it's never good to collect a lot more money than you need, but I think we can look at Quakertown and see the pickle that they're in, a really bad situation. So it is a delicate balancing act, but I think you're doing very well. Thank you for, it seems conscientious effort to me.
Dr. Urinel.
And to add to that, I would say that with the exception of the borrowing effort for the Upper Bucks Vocational Technical School, the district has not borrowed money since 2007. And we have done the capital project upgrades in our schools in particular, all 7 elementary schools and the middle schools that haven't been built recently. I think that's important to note, and it helped us in many, many ways down the road. And as Mrs. Cullen noted, the Quakertown experience is kind of the reverse, and I don't think we want to be there. I'm sure that they don't want to be there either, but it is a potential pitfall if you get to that point. So I also want to note that the debt load in this district is relatively low for a large district. In 7 years, assuming we don't borrow more money, and who knows, but in 7 years that will drop fairly dramatically. Again, and those issues are normally done on a wraparound basis for 20 years or more. So that bodes well, I think, in terms of being able to continue this capital projects effort for some years to come.
Actually, I'd just like to make a correction, Dr. Urinel, because I'm sure it'll be brought to our attention. In about 2013, we borrowed $10 million as well. Or
For the
2000
UBCTS.
No, in addition to that, I believe.
Maybe you're right. I will stand corrected if you
Why
do that.
didn't we?
We did, and, not gonna put you on the spot, but maybe you can come back to us. There was a few items that rolled up in there. It wasn't $10 million for the state.
Right.
It was $10 million for a variety of projects. We kind of paid things off.
For some of things, then.
We did, and then we spread it out over time.
I just wanted it stated
Clarify.
correctly.
Yeah, good point.
That's all.
Thank you.
I wasn't trying to trip you.
No, it's good.
Well, thank you.
Anybody else have anything to chime in? I mean, I think it's we're good, Joan. Mrs. Coleman.
Are we going to get to the point where we say which option we want, or which one of the options?
Well, I want to, yeah, sure, I think we have to do that. I think if you look at slide 7, you see the timeline. It's kind of bearing down on us. Still, after all this time up here, this one is called the proposed final budget, right? That's the one we're at now?
Correct. Yep.
That has to be done by the 15th. Is that the night of our meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So where we're at then is the next step is where do we stand on this? Because I think it would be helpful for Sean and Dr. Radigan for us to, sort of state our intentions tonight, at least what we're looking at. Everybody, is that fair?
Sure.
I think we need to do that. And do you want to start, Mrs. Miller, down and work our way around the table?
Sure. I would prefer to borrow, to keep our staff recommendations in place and to go with the moving some fund balance over to the general balance.
Mr. Kraus?
Yeah, I would agree with Mrs. Miller in looking at slide 9, the impact of moving that money to balance the budget and not have a tax increase this year. It's not going to hurt us very much. So that would be my vote to exercise option 2.
Mrs. Schmidt?
First, I do agree with Mrs. Miller on the staffing. I don't want to see that go away because I believe it'll impact what we've the positives that we're making here with the high school and the middle school. So, I think that would just take us back too many steps. That's not our intention. The amount from fund balance, I just want to clarify, Mr. Daubert, because in the past you'd stated, it's not ideal to balance your budget with fund balance money typically, but, we're talking smaller, we're not talking several $1 million here.
We're talking about 0.25% of the
Okay.
total expenditures to balance with fund balance. And really, I mean, it's a budget, so you have to have some tolerable range of, over budget or under budget.
Under budget, yeah.
When your revenues come in and your expenditures come in, you have to have, you're never going to spend and receive dollar for dollar what you
What you
budget.
budgeted, yeah.
So
Okay.
there will be some play, and we've seen that over the years.
Yeah,
There
I
is-
just wanted to bring, because I mean,
Yes.
it's been discussion, I don't want to make it that, because in my opinion, I agree with what you had said in the past, that you don't balance budget off of fund balance. You have to make your expenditures and your revenues work, but I'll support the moving the money from the fund balance.
Dr. Yarnell?
No, I agree with Mrs. Schmidt that, using fund balance isn't the ideal way to balance a budget. But in this case, it's a small enough amount that I'm okay with that. I certainly don't want to lose or use option 3 and lose those teachers or not have those teachers next year. So that would be the one that I would absolutely be opposed to. So the second one seems like a reasonable option. I agree that we shouldn't be using it for operating expenses, but I assume there are things, even buses in there, which is what we used it for last year. Those, I think, can easily be classified as capital. We use them for 10, 12, or even 15 years. So, if you have to play out which things you have to use that, actually use that fund balance, that's the way I would credit it. Crediting for 4 additional teachers, 4.1 additional teachers, I think is a very bad idea, because not only do they cost that amount this year, next year they will cost that amount and more that you'll have to build back into the budget, and they will potentially be here for 30 or even 40 years. So you would have that over the long haul. So the 2 would be fine with me.
We've maintained our $850,000 in the 17-18 budget for new buses again. So Dr. Yarnell, to your point, absolutely. Can be used, as you said.
I have a question on the fund balance page. So in the 2016 year, you have balanced the general fund budget. You have 350,000, and then this year it's 337, which is our gap. So we used it in the budget. It was budgeted last year. We balanced the budget last year with 350,000.
Actually, there were 2 pieces to the budget last year. There was the transportation commitment and also the 350,000. The 350,000 is our budgetary reserve, and that's what that 350,000 was for last year, the budgetary. And again, we have the budgetary reserve in the 17-18 budget also. So we have that extra chunk of expenditure in the budget.
So you're saying we have 350,000 budgetary reserve, and last year we put that, we said, okay, we're gonna take that from fund balance instead of having it in the general fund budget, but we didn't use it.
Correct. If we were to expend it, that 300, if we spent every other dollar in the budget and expended that 350,000 for budgetary reserve, and our revenues came in exactly what we budgeted, then we would have had to pull the 350,000 from the reserve to balance.
From the fund balance.
I'm sorry, yes, from the fund balance.
So couldn't we do the same thing this year?
That's what we're doing.
So we're saying that's the budgetary reserve, so it's not even
No, I'm sorry. The budgetary reserve is in the budget again this year. And if you just look at the entire budget, all is a great big pie. What you need is 337,000 to balance, which is less than the budgetary reserve.
All right, I just wanted to clarify. That's fine, so you can kind of call it what you
You
want,
can-
but yeah.
you-
I'm definitely not for cutting the staff, so I would go for option 2, using the fund balance. Thanks.
I'm also for option 2. The option 3 isn't an option. We've done too much work for that, and I'm really not interested in nickel and diming the taxpayers to have them pay just that little amount. To me, like Dr. Yarnell and Mrs. Schmidt said, you're borrowing, but it's in a budget like this, it's a negligible amount. I know $337,000 isn't negligible, but when we're talking about something like this, to me, it seems logical.
Bullet point 3 is not an option. Number 2.
Okay, so that comes back around to me. I do not want to have a tax increase this year because of everything that's already been mentioned. But I did want to say that I think that since you started here, Sean, you've really tightened the belt. I think you cut our expenses a lot more than I expected that they could have been cut. So I learned something from that. I think we were fortunate that we kind of came into that money in some ways. The teachers worked with us. That's my one concern is that the upcoming negotiations. They'll be aware of this budget. They've been made aware of it. These big numbers are floating all around. But that's what we do here. We're just going to have to cope with it. And I think that the taxpayers have always supported what, at least since I've been here, what we've been doing. And it's, I think they'll do it again. And I think we're in a good spot. We've replenished the buses. We've done a lot of things. We raise the taxes, every year. And this year, I don't think we need to. And just keep up the good work with what you're doing. And I think you changed our budgeting systemically. So you weren't really we aren't really budgeting any longer to what it was before. You're budgeting to actuals. Correct?
Correct.
Am I right about that? So I don't know what else we could ask you. So I think it's a good budget. And we're 8 for 8 here tonight on no tax increase. So that's about all I have to say. We can move on with the rest of the agenda tonight unless anybody else wants to chime in or anything.
So,
I just want to piggyback on what Barry said, and yes, thank you for, what you brought here and what you put together for us. Appreciate it.
thank you both for those kind words. I will just tell you what you'll see, so there's no surprises when you get your agenda package for the 15th, which is the voting meeting, is you'll see the budget on the PD 2028, which is the state budget form. That's the document that you must pass the budget on, and then that document we will put on out for public display and advertise that it's available for inspection. And you can, it's within your right after the first budget passage to make changes to that budget if you wish to do so. Between the first vote and the second vote. Again, then we'll come back in June with the budget on the same document, the PD 2028 form, and we'll have the final passage. And then at that time also, we'll have our other motions for homestead, farmstead, and the tax rates and things like that. That'll be the June vote. The May vote is just the one vote that you'll do. So. And if there's any questions about any of that or anything you need cleared up, please let me know, and we'll make sure that everybody's on the same page. So that's our path moving forward, and we will have the document for you with your budget packet that comes out for the 15th. Okay.
Okay, Jeff, are you going to do the finance, the RFP? This is all Sean tonight. We'll give you a chance to get back up here.
Yeah, we'll let Sean continue.
Okay, item 2 is the contracts. This month we have 4. The first one is Pennsylvania School for the Deaf. It's a contract. It's a contract for 2 students identified by the numbers, and this is for extended school year, $280 a day for the services with the PCA, 1-to-1 per student, and $160 a day. If there's any questions about that one, I would certainly go back to Mrs. Barcola and get you answers for that. The second one is also out of Pupil Services. This is
Can you speak up a little bit? I have a hard time
This is the
hearing you.
annual IEP writer subscription renewal for $18,303, and then the $3,788 for the web module renewal subscription. This is an increase. I brought the numbers along. Last year, or the current year, it's $17,298 and $3,628. So it did go up. But again, that is for the IEP writer subscription. C is a contract for the photo booth at the senior prom, $1,450. That will be paid for by through the prom funds that are raised by the students through their activity. And the item D is a contract for DJ services at North Middle School for 5 dances, $250 per dance. And again, that's paid for by the student activities. So the first two are actually general fund expenditures. Okay, moving on, we have the the review of the bids that went out for next year. The first response is for the student assignment books for elementary and middle school. We don't use these books in the high school anymore. We stopped using those because of the laptops for the one-to-one programs, so they don't use the assignment books. But you can see the cost there of $4,004 and $45.22. The next two, the snow removal and the bus washing, we did not receive responses for those bids, so we will be working to try to find someone to provide those services over at the bus garage. The bus washing, we do have the option to perhaps use our employees over the summer to do the annual bus cleaning. That is something that's happened, as I understand it, here in the past. We've used the employees, not since I've been here though. So it's that is an option. That if we can get some of the employees, actually bus drivers that want to do that work and earn some extra money over the summer, we can utilize those folks for that. Okay, the next items are all from Carl Duke, and he's the head mechanic. So you've got brake parts, engine transmission parts, batteries, shock fluids, and the radio maintenance. So I'm not real good at much of any of this. I'm thinking shock fluids means water, but probably not. So yeah, so this is all bus parts. So if you have any questions about any of these, please let me know.
Internal fluid,
Transmission fluid.
Yeah, right.
Sean, on those bid proposals, do you want me to send you an email?
Yes.
Because I do have
Yep.
a number of questions.
Sure.
Okay.
And I'll get you answers from Carl.
All right, thanks.
Bet.
You don't run in the same crowd.
And of course, item I is the bids for through the Bucks County IU for the new and recap tires. That bid is done as a consortium for all the districts in our IU, so we get much better prices on tires, and you can see the information there. The next item is number 4. This is lunch prices for 17-18. This one, we are actually due to the formula, the federal government formula for lunch prices we're actually being forced to raise our prices for elementary lunch and middle and high school lunch this year by 10 cents. The formula actually works out that we should raise them by 17 cents, but there's a cap of 10 cents on the formula. And as I understand, the reasoning for the formula itself is to make sure that school districts are charging enough money for their paid, to their paid lunch folks, so that the federal program is not subsidizing those people that are paying for lunch. So that's the meaning, that's the reason for the formula. So it actually forces us to raise the lunch prices. According to Gina, we, my notes here from Gina, 14-15 was the last time we raised lunch prices, and that was a 10-cent increase. The last 2 years we have not. And she's also going to raise the adult meal price from $3.75 to $4, and that will be the first increase